stressors. Climate change is not just a pressing global environmental challenge. It disproportionately affects developing and least developed countries, despite their historical lower contribution to its causes. It is not an underestimated to say that climate change impacts all aspects of life and accentuates challenges faced in Africa. Climate change is a threat multiplier, disrupting livelihoods and driving people into forced displacement and migration. Climate change intensifies scarcities of natural resources, which can drive violence and conflict, mounting pressure on government relations. Climate change threatens the capacity of governments to protect its people, promote security and welfare, and advance development in a sustainable manner for the benefit of all. Efforts to address the negative consequences and the impacts of climate change raise difficult questions of law and policy. What role do the law and legal institutions play in climate action, including adaptation and mitigation measures? What role can actors within legal institutions, such as judges, lawyers, legislators, academia, among others, play in climate action through compensating the law for loss and damage and climate financing? What is the role of the environmental rule of law to achieve climate justice? Just last week, at the initiative of the government of Vanuatu, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution calling for the first time on the United Nations International Court of Justice to establish the obligations that countries will have to address the climate crisis and the consequences if they do not. This celebrated development for an advisory opinion clearly underlines the role of climate justice in the environmental rule of law. Action on current and future adverse impacts of climate change in Africa requires strengthening climate-related institutions, laws, regulations, and policies to support mitigation and adaptation. These measures must emphasize the eradication of poverty and equality, crucial elements of sustainable development. The role of the judiciary is critical, calling on the judiciary to keep abreast of the emerging trends and to be equipped with the legal and scientific knowledge and the tools to adjudicate on climate cases. There is promising action in Africa showing where the region can contribute to action on climate change through the environmental rule of law. At the international level, African countries demonstrated leadership. Literally up to 98% of African countries submitted their first nationally determined contribution commitments to the Paris Agreement on climate change. Over 80% of the African countries have submitted their updated nationally determined contributions. This makes Africa the continent with the highest compliance rate to the Paris Agreement requirement. African countries have together a plethora of laws and policies on environment and climate change, complementing these nationally climate-determined contributions. At the regional level, the African Union has a climate change strategy for countries to strengthen local laws and policies. And at sub-regional levels, regional economic commissions likewise have climate change policy frameworks, like the East Africa Climate Change Policy Framework. Many countries still have gaps and barriers in their legal and institutional frameworks, which limit their ability to effectively implement the climate-related policies. Despite this, there are many opportunities for climate change mitigation and adaptation, including under finance for sustainable development and green growth. To access these opportunities, countries need to adopt country-driven approaches supported by the multilateral regimes. Such approaches must be based on domestic priorities, possibilities, and capabilities. Excellencies, looking ahead, a notable area of progress at the international level that can drive discussions on regional implications emerged at the 27th Climate Change Conference in Egypt last year in November, where states reached a historical breakthrough in efforts to help vulnerable countries deal with loss and damage from the impacts of climate change. A fund was established to aid countries facing severe damage for climate change. However, countries and the judiciary need to help and support to be able to measure the loss and damage, to be able to benefit from this fund when it's fully operational. So the big question now is, how can this be turned into substantive, inclusive investment that can ensure a just transition for African economies? Through a low-carbon, climate-resilient development pathways. For this, the judiciary's role in a whole-of-government approach for implementing actions, including of loss and damage, and towards a just transition becomes critical. Excellencies, 4 years ago, the idea of collaborative platform for the judiciary in Africa on environmental compliance and enforcement was just a vision. At that time, and in most judicial training institutes in Africa, the status of environmental law training for judicial officers was ad hoc, expensive, and unsustainable. UNEP had the pleasure and was tasked with the challenge to assess the effectiveness of environmental law in Africa through the eyes of the judiciary. In response, we embarked on a journey together with the partners, together with yourselves, the judiciaries, to establish a sustainable network that integrates environmental law and adjudication in judicial institutions to enhance the effectiveness of environmental adjudication. Fast forward to today, the initiative to establish the network has grown in leaps and bounds. The African Judicial Education Network on Environmental Law is convening its third symposium and the third Greening General Meeting. From one of the pioneer initiatives of this initiative, I'm proud of the achievements of all the stakeholders that have played a part in this journey. The United Nations Environment Programme will continue to work with you, the judiciaries and judicial institutions, to further this vision. I wish you a fruitful deliberations as you reflect on the gains made in integrating environmental law, in particular climate change in judicial training. As you map the way forward through developing solutions to promote adjudication of climate cases, I hope this forum can propose actions to promote the environmental rule of law towards achieving environmental dimensions of sustainable development. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Rema. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to the UNEP. We do not take for granted the support that we continue to receive from UNEP and all your partners. Thank you very much. Excellency, may allow me to acknowledge the presence of Lord Robert Comworth, former Supreme Court Judge, the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for joining us. At this juncture, Your Excellency, I will request the Honorable, the Deputy Chief Justice, Vice President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, of the Republic of Kenya, to come forward and make her remarks and take on the remaining part, the next part of the program. Honorable Philomena Mbete Mwilu.
Thank you, Chief Registrar. Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, who is also the Commander of our Defense Forces, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the Honorable the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Mother Koome, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honorable Mr. Moses Wetangula, otherwise known as Masika, my lords, the Chief Justices of Africa, I am very delighted that this is real. It has finally happened. I am happy that I stand here to welcome all of you to Nairobi, Kenya, the green city in and under the sun. Karibu sana Nairobi. Kenya hakuna matata. I am delighted to join all of us today and to be the one to start making everybody comfortable in the judiciary of Kenya. It's not lost on any of us, particularly those of us of judicial minds, that this is an extremely important conference on strengthening the capacity of judiciaries across the region in addressing the intersecting and global environmental crisis that is the environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, and climate change. Judiciaries have an important role to play in strengthening the domestic, regional, and global legal framework. And so those of us from the judiciary are here to learn, to green our judicial minds so that our jurisprudence on the environment is sufficiently greened so as to tackle climate change and all the effects on the environment. Our approach must be collaborative and our solutions contextual yet integrated. Hence the reason why Africa is present in Nairobi, Kenya. Colleagues, I look forward to learning, to sharing ideas and best practices from across the region of Africa. It is the cross-fertilization of ideas, innovations, and approaches that will improve our legal frameworks and green jurisprudence on issues climate change, enhance access to justice in related matters, and ultimately contribute to the global effect in addressing climate change. I'm happy it is happening during my time, and I'm happy that it is happening in Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome, and let us learn, let us take time to learn, because after the third symposium in Nairobi, all of us in the judiciary in Africa will be expected to think green, to think climate change, to think how to stop the adverse effects of misbehaving on the environment. It is my privileged honor to invite Mr. Speaker, sir, the Speaker of the National Assembly of Kenya to address us, and thereafter, please take the opportunity to invite my Chief Justice to speak to us, and thereafter we proceed. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. Your Excellency, our President and Commander-in-Chief, my Lord Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and other law lords present, our Attorney General, our ministers present, ladies and gentlemen, mine will be very brief. When you talk environment, sometimes you want to talk from your heart. Everywhere you go in our villages, our grandmothers, our elder citizens have a very common talk that it is not and has never been like this. They'll tell you when we settled here, this was a forest and you see no tree around. They'll tell you when we settled here, there was a spring down there and there's no spring today. They'll tell you it was very difficult to cross that river to go to the other part of our land, and there's no river. That is the change of our environment. Permanent rivers are now seasonal. Forests have been destroyed to a level where there are now arsals. And above all, the diminishing rain pattern is a worry to all of us. So when the judiciary comes together to think green, to think environment, it is very encouraging to many of us. I believe, Chief Justice, you invited me here to give you an assurance that any legislative proposals that comes to Parliament on many matters, but particularly on environment, will be given top priority. Your Excellency, we need a serious review of environmental-related legislation because most of it predates our independence, when we used to tap offenders on the wrist and tell them to go away. People armed with power source mowing down forests with impunity get away with it. People who release pollutants into our fresh water sources like rivers get away with impunity. I'm sure, Your Excellency, a year ago you read the serialization in one of our dailies of the death of Athi River, right from Nairobi, where is the source, to the end in the Indian Ocean. It's a sludge. And from that sludge, wananchi grow crops that they bring back to us to eat, highly toxic material. So as the judiciary gets at the centerpiece of greening the world, the judiciary only enforces the law that we pass. And they also punish those that you take there to be punished. The Chief Justice will not stand on the street corner and hunt for offenders. She sits and waits for them. So I urge the executive, Your Excellency, to be firm in dealing with those who destroy environment, those who pollute our environment, those who pollute our rivers. And finally, you are all Africans. We are told in every symposium we go that the Congo Basin and the Amazon Basin are the lungs of the world. But every day you fly over the Congo or read about the Congo, you are told of how many millions of acres of Congo are disappearing. We urge you, the law lords, to ensure that you also exert a bit of influence on the executive. Don't sit there and wait for the laws to be brought to you to interpret and administer. Also make proposals to the executive that this law, the punishment is too lenient, the enforcement is difficult, make it easier so that we can be able to protect our environment. Your Excellency, I want to salute you for announcing that Kenya is going to plant 15 billion trees. This is a very positive step. But as we plant the trees, Your Excellency, we must have a clear roadmap on how to plant the trees, how to look after those trees, and how to protect those trees. In certain jurisdictions, you cannot cut down a tree in your own home without permission. But in our country, sometimes we take liberties and cut trees that are not even on our properties. Let me end here by saluting all of you, law lords, with our Chief Justice taking the lead for bringing this important meeting to Kenya. And I believe that at the end of the meeting, Kenya will be a lot richer in our protection and sustainment of our environment. Thank you, Chief Justice. I now invite you.
Thank you very much, my brother, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto. I've already recognized the Speaker, the Honorable Chief Justices from the various jurisdictions present here this morning, the Deputy Chief Justice, Cabinet Secretary, and the Attorney General, all the judges from various jurisdictions present, Your Excellencies, judges, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Indeed, it is an honor and a great privilege for me to stand before you today and welcome you to Nairobi, the green city in the sun. But before I speak, I wish to recognize the former two Chief Justices, the Honorable Professor Willie Mutunga, our first Chief Justice under the Kenya Constitution, and the Honorable Justice David Maraga. Many people have mentioned your name. If you could come here, both of you, my lords, and just say hello to these delegates. I am very, very honored to have you in this forum. I am standing on your great shoulders because you started the Judiciary on a transformation. Please greet the audience.
Habari zenu? Karibuni Kenya.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, the Chief Justices here present, and all the dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be with you here. When I was in Zimbabwe in 2019 and I requested that this meeting be held here, we thought we were going to hold it in 2020, but we all know what happened and it was not possible. I'm happy, Chief Justice, that at last it is come and you've been able to host this meeting here. We are delighted to have all of you here. May God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, my brothers. I stand on their broad shoulders because they set up the judiciary transformation framework that set us on the path of ensuring that we create a very strong, independent judiciaries. When I became the Chief Justice, we agreed we continue on that trajectory, and the only diversion I took is that I am a woman, I wear shoe number 5, and they are high heels. I warned myself not to walk in their shoes, but to stand on their shoulders, which is the framework that they established. Thank you very much, my brothers. As we gather here, we are not lamenting. We as Africa, we are solidifying our voices to say that we will firmly protect our environment because it affects us, and we have the responsibility to own it and care for it for the future generations. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for speaking from your heart, because I think we need to simplify this message of environmental protection. And I'm being a child rights defender. What I'm telling people now is that we need to nurture our environment the same way we nurture our children. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to each one of you for making time to come to Nairobi to attend this symposium. Your Excellency, this is indeed a sign of all our unwavering commitment and dedication to the cause of environmental justice. And your esteemed presence today is a testament to the importance and urgency of the issues we are here to discuss and also to resolve. We as African judiciaries, we have already agreed on a pathway to forge a corrective front in the fight against climate change. As we gather here in Nairobi, I am happy to share with you that the Kenyan judiciary is committed to serving as the hub for African judiciaries dialogue. We need to talk to each other as Africans. You have heard that we are bearing a bigger burden of the effect of the climate change. This is enough to bring us together. And for us in the Kenyan judiciary, we view hosting regional judiciaries dialogues also as a means of fostering the development of African jurisprudence that is responsive to the unique concerns and aspirations of our continent. It is our vision to create a robust and dynamic platform for knowledge exchange, for our capacity building, and collaboration among African judiciaries, enabling us to better understand, interpret, and apply the law to promote the social development and transformation of our respective judiciaries. In this context, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we view this 3-in-1 symposium on climate change as part of regional judicial dialogue aimed at providing a platform for us African judges and judicial officers to exchange ideas, learn from each other, and acquire the requisite knowledge, skills, and tools needed to effectively address the challenges facing our continent. As we all know, Our continent is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Our people, our economies, and our natural resources are all at risk as we grapple with the devastating consequences of rising temperatures, erratic weather patterns, and loss of biodiversity. It is within this context that our courts must play a decisive role in driving the adaptation, mitigation, and resilience-building efforts required to combat climate change and to secure a sustainable future for our people. Indeed, our courts are the guardians of the rule of law and protectors of the constitutional rights, including the fundamental right to a clean and healthy environment. As judges, we have unique responsibility of interpreting and applying the law in a manner that promotes environmental sustainability, social equity, and intergenerational justice. This requires us to be bold, to be innovative, and proactive in our approach to environmental litigation, ensuring that our decisions and judgments contribute to the realization of a greener, more resilient Africa. In Kenya, we have made significant strides in promoting a transformative environmental constitutionalism that is rooted in the provisions of our Constitution and the jurisprudence of our National Environmental Tribunal and the Environment and Land Court and other superior courts. Our courts are playing a critical role in advancing environmental justice in Kenya by interpreting and applying the Constitution and other laws in a manner that promotes sustainable use and management of our land and natural resources. But moving forward from this symposium, we are saying we need to work with everybody else and also build their capacities and build their awareness about environmental protection. And as we look to the future, it is imperative that our judiciaries in Africa will continue to play a proactive role in the fight against climate change and building successes and lessons learned from our experiences thus far. We must be unyielding in our pursuit for justice, ensuring that our decisions and judgments contribute to the realization of a greener, more resilient, and sustainable Africa. In this regard, I call my brother and sister Chief Justices and judges present here today. We all join hands in a united front against climate change. We leverage on our collective wisdom, expertise, and our power of convening others to develop a jurisprudence that is uniquely African and responsive to our shared concerns. Let us collaborate, let us learn from one another, and share our experiences as we work together to build a brighter, more sustainable future for our continent and our people. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to reiterate that as guardians of the rule of law and the protectors of the constitutional rights of our people, we have a unique responsibility to ensure that our decisions and judgments contribute to greener, resilient, and sustainable Africa. Let us seize this moment to reaffirm our commitment to the cause of environmental justice and to pledge our unwavering support to all the efforts that have been put together by our respective judiciaries in combating climate change. Together we can make a difference, and together we can build a brighter, more sustainable future for our continent and our people. I wish you all a very, very fruitful and enriching symposium, and I am confident that our deliberations in the next few days will yield meaningful insights and lasting partnerships that will serve to strengthen our collective resolve in the fight against climate change. Once again, Your Excellency, I extend a very, very warm welcome to our guests to Nairobi and pray that our shared efforts in pursuit of environmental justice will bear fruit for generations to come. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, my lords and ladies, please join me as I welcome His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, to address this gathering and officially open the symposium. Welcome, sir, to come and address us.
Please, let's take our seats. Madam Chief Justice and President of our Supreme Court, Madam Deputy Chief Justice, Chief Justice Emeritus, the Honorable Willie Mutunga and the Honorable David Maraga, Chief Justices from various parts of our continent, judges of the Supreme Court, distinguished judicial officers from different parts of our continent, ladies and gentlemen, and our visitors, good morning and welcome. Welcome to Nairobi and welcome to Kenya. I join Madam Chief Justice for the convener of this symposium in welcoming you to both Nairobi and Kenya. Let me volunteer some information about Nairobi and about Kenya. About Nairobi, this is the city that has a national park within 10 minutes from your hotel. So you may find some lion or cheetah because sometimes they escape from the national park. Please be careful because they are not domesticated. Welcome to Kenya. And again, on this one, I speak with the authority of a scientist, being a scientist myself, that science has proved that Kenya is the cradle of mankind. You may find yourself having this feeling that you are more at home here than from where you come from. Please understand that this is where we all started, and we can tell you, welcome home. And it is inspiring to be here to witness Africa's judicial leadership as you mobilize your judicial authority, intellectual power, and moral commitment to intervene in our generation's defining struggle. I am highly encouraged to note the depth of thought in your appreciation of the existential magnitude of climate change and of the imperative for urgent action by all stakeholders anchored on common institutional coordination. Although climate change is a universal existential threat, there is good reason for Africa's institutions and leadership to drive the agenda of mitigating its effects and eliminating the human activity that is driving it. The first reason is the fact that Africa is by far the least polluting continent, yet it is by far the most adversely affected by climate change. The entirety of industrial and economic activity from all of the continent's economies contributes less than 5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. These emissions are the cause of a steady and dangerous rise in global temperatures, which have resulted in the extinction of plants and animal species, rise in sea levels, disruptions in climate patterns, drought, and desertification. The brunt of these adverse effects and impacts has been borne by vulnerable African populations residing in less developed parts of the world. Droughts are more frequent and more severe. Our region has undergone a 5-season-long drought, which has decimated domestic and wild animal populations, wiped out food crops, disrupting and threatening the lives of millions of people. Water stress caused by climate change has been devastating, both directly and as a driver of conflict over water and pastures. Poverty has been exacerbated by loss of livestock, which forms the mainstay of pastoralist economic livelihoods, and massive crop failure, which weakened the foundations of farming economies. In addition to drought, African populations are experiencing floods, heat waves, and outbreak of climate change-related diseases. African livelihood, security, and development is in danger and will remain at stake unless we collectively wage aggressive combat to reverse the situation through policies and other institutional action to implement mitigation, enhance adaptation, and build resilience. The looming climate disaster is particularly tragic for Africa, which is entering a new, promising era of peace and prosperity as the continent of the future. Many vital indicators affirm that indeed Africa is rising, powered by its youthful population, energy, resources, and hope. It is important for Africa to undertake concerted action to win the war on climate change because it is disproportionately affected by its adverse impacts, and also because necessary global responses to climate change are going to institute structural change. The institutional configurations and economic resets emanating from this structural change will install Africa not only as a continent of the future, but as the world's green economic superpower. Africa is abundantly endowed with all the resources required to power green industrialization. Our clean and green power potential is incomparable. Just to give you indications, 92% of our grid in Kenya is clean and green. It is the case in many other African countries, and the potential to make it the case in many African nations is real and is possible. Our clean and green power potential, as I said, is immense. Hydro, geothermal, wind, and solar power potential is super abundant. The mineral resources needed for green energy technology also exists plentifully in our continent. We are the world's youngest continent, with a mean age of 25 and growing younger every year. Our people constitute a 3 billion strong market and a pool of skilled, motivated, and capable workforce. Future global sustainability will depend on a robust engagement with Africa in many fundamental ways. The world knows this, and African institutions and stakeholders must be ready for this engagement. And that is why this symposium is very important. I am very proud of the firm commitment demonstrated by the African Union in this matter at COP27, which was held last November in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, Africa's voice was clear. The development path taken by the world's economic and industrial powers is unsustainable and prejudicial to Africa and the global South. Climate change has brought home that fact in sobering detail. Africa is emphatic that although prosperity is an urgent goal to liberate our people from the indignity of poverty and inequality, the path of pollution is not an option. The African Union prefers a more ecologically responsible industrialization, one that promotes multi-sectoral climate resilience in agriculture and food systems, water resources, energy, transport and infrastructure, among others. We also insist, quite firmly, that international development financing must be more appropriate for the needs of our existential moment in terms of how much resources is accessible, affordable, and adequate. In February, I was encouraged to witness the impressive level of activity accomplished by African group of negotiators, especially at COP27, as well as the various African climate change initiatives. The Committee of African Heads of State and Governments on Climate Change, which I chair, also coordinates various African climate change commissions that are doing extremely important work in many regions of our continent to implement the Africa climate change and green recovery agenda. I'm also honored to lead Kenya's participation in these regional, continental, and climate actions. It is a privilege to join our African brothers and sisters in this good fight and make our contribution to the defining struggle of our generation. Africa is alive to the imperative of this moment in a way that is simply inspiring. I will share with you Kenya's experience of this journey so far. From the very inception, our aspirations for economic development and shared prosperity has been inextricably tied to a firm commitment to environmental sustainability. In my earlier statement, I did paint the picture of where we are as a continent. I mean, the power of industrialization that has been premised on fossil fuels, despite its adverse effects, is what has driven industrialization in the world so far. The world today is at a crossroads. The crossroads being, do we continue the fossil fuel powered industrialization, which is destroying our globe with disastrous effects, or do we go green? I think that decision is no longer a decision that we are waiting to make. It is an existential threat that faces us as humanity, and the option is already made for us that we can only go green. Why Africa is in a pivotal position as we go green is because, number one, Africa has the highest reserves and potential for green energy, whether it is geothermal, wind, solar, hydro. No other part of the world has the resources we have. Number two, we have the resources in our continent, the mineral resources, the natural resources, for green energy technology. Number three, we have the greatest potential for green, sustainable agriculture and food production, because 2/3 of the world's uncultivated arable land is in Africa. And number 4, we have the youngest population, energetic, innovative, creative. And in any case, 1/4 of the world's population will live in the African continent by 2050. So if you are looking for the people to work for this globe, for humanity, whether you like it or not, they will be in the African continent. Forget about the small migration that is happening now from Africa. Shortly, I promise you, the migration will be in the opposite direction. Very shortly. The only thing that stands between us and the huge potential we have in this continent. And I want to encourage you, as Chief Justices of our continent, the only thing that stands between us and this huge potential is a financial system that was designed to serve a different time. And that is why we are insisting that we must rethink the international financial system to align it with the reality and the imperative of this moment. It is not sustainable anymore for us, the IMF and the World Bank and the International Financial Institution in its current configuration. And we are not saying we want an international financial system that is favorable to Africa. No. We want an international financial system that is fair to everybody. Having a fair international financial system is not asking for too much. I think it's just asking for what is fair. We want to access development resources at the same rate as everybody else is. It is a fallacy for anybody to imagine that it is possible to grow any part of the world to the exclusion of any other part of the world. Because whether we like it or not, we share this globe. And if today anybody imagines that climate change is affecting the global south more than the global north, it won't be for long. Shortly, we will all either float or sink. So the sooner we have a fair international financial system that makes it possible for us as humanity to exploit all the resources available to us in a sustainable manner, the better for all of us as humanity. The sooner we get ourselves there, the better. As a continent, we want to have a conversation that is balanced. Even as we demand for a fair international financial system, Africa will be coming to the table with our assets. We will not be coming to the table in any other manner. We will come to the table with our assets. We have tremendous renewable energy resources that can power green industrialization, green sustainable agriculture. We will be coming to the table with millions of enthusiastic, hardworking, innovative, creative young people. We will be coming to the table with our natural and mineral resources that can be used for green technology to power the world's future. We will be coming to the table with a huge 3 billion African market. So we will be coming with assets. And I think, good people, we must make our case unapologetically so that we can occupy our place on the table. Because I am told, if you are not on the table, you possibly could be in the menu. The commitment by the people of Kenya goes further and deeper. When we enacted a new constitution in 2010, we placed the environment at the foundation of our normative and institutional architecture. The fourth paragraph of our Constitution's preamble states that our respect for the environment and determination to sustain it was one of the motivating premises in enacting our Constitution. Article 42 entrenches a clean and healthy environment as a fundamental human right, while Article 67 and 70 set out the framework for the enforcement of environmental rights and obligations. Once we enter the domain of rights and obligations, the respective mandates of the three arms of government automatically follow. Article 21, the state is required as a fundamental duty to take legislative, policy, and other measures required to actualize these rights. Because of the centrality of land in economic and social and cultural and environmental discourse, the Constitution institutes a robust framework for land and environmental governance with a dedicated constitutional commission and the consequential establishment of the Land and Environment Division of the High Court. The court adjudicates matters related to land, including natural resources and environmental sustainability. As a matter of national policy, Kenya has been involved in environmental diplomacy since the early years of our republic. At the famous Stockholm Conference in 1972, my predecessor and all of us, we impressed on the United Nations for the need to have a dedicated multilateral environmental agency and lobbied to host it in Africa. As a result, the headquarters of the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, is based here in Nairobi. It means it remains the only UN global headquarters in the global south. And for your information, the largest. In 1992, Kenya called the world's attention to the emerging threat of depletion of the ozone layer by toxic emissions and to the buildup of greenhouse gas emissions, which posed dangerous consequences on life on Earth. Today, we remain strongly committed to our national tradition of championing ecological responsibility throughout the world, but starting here at home. In 2016, Parliament enacted the Climate Change Act, providing us the institutional framework to anchor the national response to climate change. It also legislated the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, which sets out the principles, standards, and procedures for the sustainable use, conservation, and management of the environment and all our natural resources. In December last year, I launched a national tree planting drive. The Forest and Rangeland Restoration Initiative aims to grow 15 billion trees by the year 2030, and this will increase the national tree cover from the current 12.3% to 30%, which will be 3 times the constitutionally mandated minimum of 10%. It will further contribute to our African Landscape Restoration Initiative target, as well as other initiatives to restore degraded lands, forests, and water towers. The government of Kenya is also taking measures to ensure that every ministry, department, and agency aligns its policies, strategies, programs, and projects with our green agenda. Strengthening the role of judiciaries in addressing climate change in Africa, which is the theme of this symposium, is highly appropriate, and it is also of fundamental significance to our collective readiness to take up global leadership in post-transition economic and industrial order, and thus usher the world into a future of green, clean, and inclusive prosperity. I congratulate you for holding the 3rd Regional Symposium on Green Judiciaries in Africa. I also recognize that you are also holding the 3rd Chief Justice Forum on Environmental Law, as well as the 3rd General Conference of the Africa Judicial Education Network on Environmental Law. Thank you for doing it now and hosting them here in Kenya. We are deeply honored to be your hosts, and I hope that we have lived up to your reputation to our reputation of legendary hospitality, magical attraction, and delightful experiences. Critically, this event demonstrates beyond any doubt that our judiciaries have come of age. We cannot take this development for granted because our judiciaries will determine whether Africa's institutions exist and are ready to handle the immense mandate that a green future entails for all of us and for the world. Claims, disputes, standards, rights, and responsibilities related to the use of land and natural resources, the institutional framework for financing climate change, carbon trading and exchanges, and transition management frameworks are only some of the areas in which our judiciaries are going to be involved. They must, therefore, pronounce themselves in a manner consistent with the values and aspirations of a continent on the rise. Greening our judiciaries will be inevitably multi-sectoral and interdisciplinary. Beyond local and international human rights, constitutional environment, trade, and economic law, our judiciaries must be exposed to diverse fields such as ecology, economics, agriculture, food systems, trade and finance, carbon markets, energy, and infrastructure, just to mention a few. To fully play your part in arbitrating and auditing Africa's aspirations to lead a new industrial revolution, our judiciaries will have to collaborate across the length and breadth of our continent, engage with diverse knowledge domains, and interact with numerous sectors. They should also formulate a unified understanding of sustainability as the guarantor of prosperity, peace and security, ecological integrity, and human well-being. Your decisions will matter a great deal. They will shape climate governance and enhance environmental justice by promoting accountability for environmental harm and facilitating collective action by all stakeholders. A few days ago, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution that the International Court of Justice renders an opinion obligating the world's biggest emitters to take responsibility for their actions. I equally challenge our judiciary to be creative and imaginative and develop jurisprudence that will enhance climate action based on the polluter pays principle. you must not underestimate your capacity because it leads to positive change. I agree with our Chief Justice's statement that our judiciary should not be left behind in this fight for our sustainable future. I therefore urge you to intensify your conscious place in this historic moment and take a decision to have your voices heard for the sake of our generations and the generations yet to be born. You are here to contribute a chapter to the world's history. I encourage you to proceed and write a fresh chapter of African resilience, sustainability, and global leadership in a new green industrial age. Together with the rest of Africa, I look forward to receiving a positive report about your robust engagements and fruitful deliberations. It is now my pleasure to declare the third regional symposium on green judiciaries in Africa formally opened. Thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless our great continent. Asante sana.
Can we just have one more warm applause for our President, Your Excellency? Thank you for those wonderful words. We only have two things we'd like to do in this program as we wind up. One is to finish off with the national anthem. Then we have some pictures we'd like taken, and your lords and lady justices, kindly I request that I guide you on the photos. The third thing will be lunch. Of course, after such a wonderful speech, it would be nice to have something in our stomach. So we'll start with the national anthem, then I'll guide you on how we're going to do the photographs. We'll take them out there. We've arranged somewhere, but kindly allow me to guide you on how we'll exit so that we'll do that decently and in order. But we start off with winding up with the national anthem. And with that, kindly we'll have the Honorable Justice Martha Koome escort His Excellency the President, followed by Lady Justice Philomena Mwilu, Honorable Justin Muturi, the Attorney General, Cabinet Secretaries present, Principal Secretaries, Honorable Lady Justice Nambita Dambuza, Miss Elizabeth Brema, Honorable Justice Dr. Smoking Wanjala, the Deputy Governor, and the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. So kindly the rest of us, if we can allow them to exit, we'll just have a photo taken. I'll guide you on who else will follow after that. So thank you very much as we now allow
out and try to advise our government in that then Canadian education system. I was shocked to find that if you are in an IT class, there is a professor, traditional professor paid by the university to teach you IT. But once in a while, a Safaricom head of systems or somebody from the sector has 2 hours every day. If you are doing something like breweries or EABL, for example, the EABL guy who does real brewing goes to a chemical engineering class and every week gets 2 hours. That means that any graduate who comes out of that class directly goes to the sector and starts to work. Same to IT. I am hoping that today, as we speak, let us see how we can marry education and also what is happening in the actual in the field. So I want to, with all those many remarks, I want to appreciate our CS, our Prime Cabinet Secretary. I must tell you, please pass our regards to the President, that he gave a good a tone at the top. you yourself, the deputy yourself, and again they gave us a powerful cabinet secretary in the name of David Owalo, who is very passionate. We have PS who has been in concert all these years, and we have now a team in ICT Authority doing a wonderful job. If we are not going to make it this time, then there is no other time that we are supposed to make it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's my duty and honor now to invite our cabinet secretary, Mheshimiwa Eli Owalo, and as he comes, I want to be the guinea pig of any ICT. So any partner, if you want to try anything, please come to Elgeyo Marakwet County. I'll ensure that you don't win. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Karibu sana.
The Prime Cabinet Secretary, my able ICT PS, Engineer John Tanui, ably assisted by my communication PS, Professor Kisiangani, the Governor of Elgeyo Marakwet, who is also the ICT Chair of the Council of Governors, legislators present, led by my friend KJ Kiare, who is the chair of the ICT Committee of the National Assembly, and of course the vice chair of the ICT Committee of the Senate, the CEOs and captains of industry present here today, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Morning again. It is indeed my pleasure this morning to be with you here for this very important forum, which is now on its 12th edition. May I start by sincerely thanking the Prime Cabinet Secretary for getting time out of his very busy schedule to be with us this morning. In the same vein, I want to appreciate everyone who was elected to participate in this forum, either physically or virtually. And to all of you, I've got no hesitation in stating that as an ICT ministry, we owe you a great debt of gratitude. I also want to thank the ICT Authority for making all the requisite preparations to make this forum a success. And last but not least, may I singularly appreciate the support and cooperation from our partners in the industry and also our donors towards this particular event that has facilitated successful preparations towards this forum. To all of you, thank you very much. If you ask me, against the background of what has been stated by previous speakers, that quite a number of initiatives have come out of this forum. And just to mention but a few, the e-Citizen platform was a product of discussions at this forum. The Oduma Centers is a product of discussions or resolutions emanating from this forum. So we can confidently state, ladies and gentlemen, that this forum is not just a learning platform, but also a thought leadership forum that informs everything that we are doing as an ICT sector in this country. I verily believe, ladies and gentlemen, that with concerted efforts from all the players, we can, in the not too distant future, perhaps within the next 3 years, we can be talking about an African-connected summit here in Kenya. And in the next 5 years, we can confidently be talking about hosting a global connected summit here in Kenya. And the opportunities emanating from that, ladies and gentlemen, will be enormous. The theme of this summit
is endless opportunities, the digital economy, endless opportunities shaping our future. This theme, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very much in tandem with what the policy framework of the Kenya Kwanza government is. It is an opportunity or a forum through which we can take stock of what we have done as ICT sector players in this country. We can recognize the fundamental milestones that we have realized. We can discern the challenges that we have faced and the strategic issues emanating from those challenges that we need to address moving forward. We can look at the gaps and the corresponding interventions that we need to undertake to close those gaps. We can look at the lessons that we have learned in the course of implementing past resolutions of this forum and how those lessons can inform what we need to do moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. It is also a forum that can enable us to contextualize our operational environment to be able to discern what we need to do, informed by the policy frameworks that exist, political factors, economic factors, social, technological, environmental, and even legal factors in our operational environment, ladies and gentlemen. Based on or informed by that contextual analysis, we should therefore be able, as an ICT fraternity or family, to determine our critical success factors moving forward that should then inform our areas of focus. As government, based on policy postulation that is espoused in our Kenya Kwanza plan, of course, spearheaded by none other than His Excellency the President and ably assisted by the Deputy President and the Prime Cabinet Secretary, in their wisdom, they determined that ICT was going to be a standalone thematic area in our Kenya Kwanza plan. The digital superhighway, ladies and gentlemen, was deemed as a key result area in our plan because ICT is not just an enabler to everything that we are going to do, but it is also a critical success factor moving forward and perhaps the only means through which we can re-engineer our processes across the board moving forward. And in this regard, ladies and gentlemen, as government, we have already embarked on the process of rolling out 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable. We are currently at the threshold of 25,000 kilometers of fiber, and we believe that over the next 5 years we shall have attained the envisaged 100,000 kilometers. Between now and June, we have already put in place all the necessary mechanisms to ensure that we do an additional 5,000 kilometers of fiber. As part of the ICT infrastructure that we need to introduce based on our Kenya Kwanza digital superhighway, we are also going ahead to establish and operationalize a minimum of 25,000 free Wi-Fi hotspots, spread evenly all over the country. We have embarked on this process, ladies and gentlemen, by targeting those segments of the society that may not be connected at the moment, but are involved in integral economic activities at the bottom of the economic pyramid. And in this regard, this process has been rolled out targeting markets and also targeting bus terminals where our youth are domiciled so that they can get involved in gainful economic activity. Within the markets, we are targeting the itinerary traders so that they can leverage on technology for purposes of e-commerce. But within the bus terminal, we are targeting the youth who hitherto were not involved in gainful employment but can leverage on technology to exploit their skills and capabilities. We are going a step further also, ladies and gentlemen, to establish a minimum of 1,450 ICT hubs in the villages, domiciled at the level of the ward, which is our lowest administrative unit. Similarly, to facilitate optimal uptake of the ICT infrastructure that we are introducing in the operational environment, we are embarking on a major digital skills program. You are aware that we have been rolling out the Hajira program. We have now introduced the Jitume program. The purpose of this, ladies and gentlemen, is to ensure that Kenyans, a critical mass of Kenyans, will have the requisite digital skills to facilitate optimal uptake of the ICT infrastructure that we are introducing in the marketplace. While doing this, I must recognize from the onset that the input of the private sector is imperative. For example, when it comes to the 100,000 kilometers of fiber, our proposition as government is that we will do just 52% or 52,000 kilometers, while we leave the rest to the private, 48% to the private sector. We have already had meetings to discuss and agree on who plays or rolls out what component of that fiber, and come out of those meetings with resolutions as to the responsibility centers for rolling out the fiber, the timelines, the targets, and all that appertains to it. So I can state without fear of contradiction, ladies and gentlemen, that as government and working in partnership with the private sector, we will ensure that all those parts of the country that hitherto were not adequately enabled by way of ICT infrastructure will get enabled. Now, the question that we need to ask ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, is if with that level of ICT infrastructure in place, plus corresponding levels of digital skills, do we really still need manual processes? And the answer is a clear no. And that is why, as government, we have gone ahead to embark on the process of digitizing government records while at the same time digitalizing government services. We have reached out to the county governments, and just last week we had got a meeting with the ICT committee of the Council of Governors and also all the CECs responsible for the functional mandate of ICT at the counties, so that correspondingly the counties also do what we are doing at the national government level by way of digitizing records and also digitalizing services. As we speak, the e-citizen platform that hitherto was in the hands of the private sector is now a full-fledged government facility. When we took it over 2 months ago, ladies and gentlemen, we only had 350 services aboard that technological platform. As at today, we have attained the threshold of 4,200 government services aboard the e-citizen platform, ladies and gentlemen. So, Your Excellency, for purposes of comfort, I want to state that the proposition that has been espoused in public by none other than His Excellency the President, that we will digitalize 5,000 government services by June 2023, is both realistic and attainable. If anything, we will surpass the target. We have already identified about 5,700 government services that can possibly be digitalized. So that is work in progress, and we will meet the target as required. The other area, ladies and gentlemen, where we have made significant strides is the area of e-commerce with technological innovation plus the corresponding levels of innovation and creativity. It is our proposition that we embark on e-commerce as opposed to the traditional way of doing business, and to anchor this on a sound framework. We have already developed the e-commerce strategy, and a policy document also is in place. We are going ahead to come up with a national addressing system that would facilitate e-commerce across all sectors of the Kenyan economy. We envisage that both the public and private sector will be able to leverage on that framework so that we move our businesses from manual processes to technological processes, starting with all the way across the entire value chain, starting with the source of raw materials up to the market, or by extension, the final consumer, if you want to call it. In terms of entrepreneurship, Your Excellency, as a ministry, of course, working with the private sector, we also believe that we can leverage on technology to introduce major initiatives within the Kenyan economy. As we speak, you are aware, which has just been presented by Safaricom, Bwana Njuguna of Safaricom, that we have partnered with the telecommunication companies to roll out the Hustler Fund, which is a major introduction in the market within our thematic area of the small and medium enterprises. That Hustler Fund is being rolled out while leveraging on technology, and also we are relying on technological platforms for purposes of repayment. If that's the case, then what we need to ask ourselves is whether or not the critical mass of Kenyans who are operating at the bottom of the economic pyramid have got access to smart-enabled phones. And the answer is that we need to do some work in that area. And as opposed to thinking of importing telephone handsets from China or Korea or anywhere else for that matter, we have deliberately reached out to the private sector, and we have now embarked on the process of local assembly of cheap but smart-enabled telephone phones. And based on feasibility studies that have been undertaken, ladies and gentlemen, we envisage that the phones will be available in the Kenyan market at a unit cost of $40 per unit. With all these interventions in place, ladies and gentlemen, we really need to think about also the level of exposure to cyber insecurity. We are aware that we have got a sound legal framework, including but not limited to the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act. We also have the Data Protection Act in place. We have gone ahead as ministry to operationalize the Office of the Data Commissioner to help us come up with an elaborate mitigation framework that would ensure that as we digitize our records and digitalize our services, we are not exposed from a cybercrime perspective. And across the entire government, we have also put in place a team, a standalone team constituted or informed by relevant facets of government that on a continuous basis is monitoring the trends of exposure or computer crimes globally, and also ensuring that we put in place elaborate mitigation measures moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that all that we need to do must be anchored on a sound legal policy and regulatory framework. And that is why, as a ministry, we remain ready and available to always consult with you people as integral stakeholders within the ICT industry so that we can come up with propositions, policy propositions, legal propositions that will ensure that everything that we do is anchored on a sound policy, legal, and regulatory framework. And of course, also informed by global best practices so that we are in tandem with best practices elsewhere. The comfort I want to give you is that our doors are open. We will always be ready to undertake such stakeholder fora so that we come up with policy propositions, relevant policy propositions moving forward, depending on unfolding events from time to time. May I reiterate once more, Your Excellency, that as government, there's just that much that we can do. But we recognize that we must partner with the private sector to realize the goals and objectives that we want to pursue. And therefore, the critical, single most important success factor moving forward is synergy, effective alignment at all levels, and of course, strategic alliances and partnerships moving forward. So we will work with you as sector players in everything that we want to do moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. May I also mention, for purposes of information, that next year we have managed to attain the rights through the Konza Technopolis to host a global ICT conference. It is we are confident that we can, in the not too distant future, as I mentioned earlier, we have the capacity to host an African Connected Summit and a global Connected Summit. Otherwise, we verily believe that working in partnership with you people, we are able to position Kenya effectively as the ICT hub of Africa so that we realize our vision of an empowered and digitalized Kenyan society, so that by extension we position our beloved country effectively in the global marketplace by way of both comparative and competitive advantage. With those many remarks, ladies and gentlemen, may I now have the distinguished honor and privilege to invite the Prime Cabinet Secretary, His Excellency Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, to give his address and declare this summit officially open. Let's all be upstanding. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Please be seated. All right. Maybe you need to stretch. Just stand and stretch a bit. Yeah, it may be good for us. Asante sana. I'll make some few remarks and then I'll take a minute or two just to share some personal experiences with you, and hopefully through that inspire you even more. Honorable Eliud Owalo, my good friend, the Cabinet Secretary for Information, Communications and the Digital Economy of Kenya. I kept on calling him Liwe Liwalo, Niwalo. Principal Secretaries, Council of Governors, represented by the Governor of Elgeyo Marakwet, Members of Parliament, industry leaders, all public officials who are here, ladies and gentlemen, and friends from beyond our borders. Ladies and gentlemen, may I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the Connected Summit 2023 conference under the theme Endless Opportunities Shaping Our Future. This conference is of countless importance to our country and the East African region because it aligns with two key pillars of the digital superhighway and creative economy. I also thank the private sector for your willingness to collaborate with the public sector in making significant contributions to the digital reforms that are taking place in our countries, and for agreeing to share knowledge, expertise, and experience in promoting digital inclusion. Your support will play a decisive role in the development of a connected Africa, thus guaranteeing the private sector the role of change agents, initiating transformation and introducing a digital philosophy in Africa. I assure you that His Excellency the President and the Government of Kenya are committed to providing you with every support required in our partnership. I therefore wish you every success in your work. Digital technologies are changing the landscapes of the global economy by creating conditions that enable all countries to take meaningful participation in the global process. In order to leverage these new opportunities, we need to create a new domain that is able and willing to embrace innovations between governments, private sector, and general society. This springs from the knowledge that only those countries that do not avoid digital changes rapidly adopt and implement innovations and achieve success in building modern, cohesive societies. As you may be aware, Africa presents a variety of economic opportunities in virtually every sector. The continent's youthful population structure is an enormous resource in this digital era. It means Africa must make digitally enabled socioeconomic development a high priority. Digital transformation should then become the driving force for innovative, inclusive, and sustainable growth, because innovations and digitization stimulate job creation, contribute to addressing poverty, reducing inequality, and contributing to the development agenda in the continent. I am aware that Africa has fewer legacy challenges to deal with and is fast adopting digitized solutions out of necessity. For Africa, the current moment offers a leapfrogging opportunity because current technologies testify to the high scale and speed at which technology transforms traditional socioeconomic sectors. It is also gratifying that the continent's leadership has prioritized and accelerated digital transformation. We are ready for an inclusive and comprehensive digital transformation strategy to guide a common, coordinated response to reap the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution. I want to confirm that as a country, Kenya has set goals to make itself the leader in the region in terms of digitization. We have created a national digital master plan, which has been referred to. As a complement of our aspiration in the Kenya Vision 2030, but with focus to the next vision of 2063 when Kenya turns 100. This commitment dovetails into the initiatives and achievements of the Kenya National ICT Master Plan, builds on the pillars of the Kenya Digital Economy Blueprint, and refocuses the country on the transformative trajectory towards a digital economy. The purposes of these developments are the provision of accessible, affordable, reliable, and secure services, thus positioning of Kenya as a globally competitive digital economy. However, to harness digital opportunities, the government is currently undertaking comprehensive implementation of the digital superhighway, which will play a critical role in enabling Kenya to revolutionize the provision of health, agriculture, housing, financial services, and as our previous speakers have spoken, also focus on the following areas in order to produce good results: the universal broadband availability that hastens the rollout of connectivity throughout the country in various markets, digitization and migration of state agency services to the e-citizen portal. Again, this has been spoken to. And of course, the Hustler Fund digital platform rollout that has increased financial inclusivity of vulnerable groups and low-income earners. But we still have to achieve many other tasks and goals. And some of these include the following. First, the first goal is to meaningfully modify the national and county services through digital technologies. In this case, digital solutions will be expanded and enhanced to help rapidly identify demands of citizens and the needs of society to promote transparency in the decision-making process and openness in interaction with citizens. In other words, digitization will improve efficiency of state agencies and mitigate the human factor to reduce corruption. The second goal is the creation of a digital society by improving digital knowledge and skills of our citizenry. We want digital technologies to become a way of life for every citizen after obtaining new knowledge and mastering new technologies. That way, we will create a more competitive citizen for the global labor market. We do this deliberately, knowing that if we do not carry out these changes, the digital world will remain closed to us. For us, digitization of the society is an important process that, among other things, will carve our space in the world. There is therefore enough reason why every citizen should be receptive to the new developments and keep learning on a continuous basis. Yet, we can only be successful through the joint efforts of all stakeholders: society, government, private sector, international organizations, and business partners. The third goal is geared towards improving and supporting education, agriculture, land reforms, and healthcare in the country by leveraging capabilities offered by digitization. We expect to improve the living standards of the population. Fourth is to use new capabilities to change conventional sectors of the economy while applying artificial intelligence to increase workforce productivity. These innovative solutions will impact on business practices and on the growth of the economy in general, because new opportunities will emerge, and leveraging these opportunities will help us rapidly move to higher levels of development. Fifth is our ambitious goal to make Kenya the regional hub for technology transfer. This moves targets creation of a more inclusive innovation in the economy that is essential for the nation's competitiveness, domestic harmony, national security, and growth. We intend to bring together research and development institutions such as tech-enabled corporations, universities, medical facilities, as well as venture capitalists, incubators, and startups that will enable us become a country that is the catalyst for digital change in this connection. In this connection, we will support domestic IT production technological projects, startup initiatives, and research. And the Waziri has spoken to this already. The other item is data protection. This aspect requires special attention. We will ensure sufficient level of cybersecurity and protection of personal data and promote digital ethics. For us, protection of the interests of the state starts with protection of state information. But the interests of our citizens are sacred. This means no one should access personal data without permission from the citizenry as required by law. The seventh target is women in technology. As part of the efforts to build resilience and inclusivity, the government is focused on supporting women economic empowerment. We know it will require the strength of innovation in digital technology to achieve an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable economy that bridges the gender gap. Hence, government is deliberately supporting and promoting women's roles in sectors of socioeconomic development through increasing business ownership opportunities, creating an enabling environment for women's enterprises, and facilitating their access to digital education, skills development, and finance. In this regard, our priority in enhancing education opportunities as well as professional vocational training for women in the digital age is crucial to enable their access to information and ownership. Again, going further on women, we have to focus on aspects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, again, with special dedication to women. As government, we are committed to rapid increase of enrollment in the formal education. This is a crucial step towards reducing the gender gap, while specifically equipping girls and women with relevant skill sets and providing an environment that improves their retention. We therefore not only aim at reducing the gender gap, but also preventing leakage of competent, productive, valuable human capital that should contribute positively to the country's economy. All these goals will be underpinned by the relevant and necessary policy framework and governance structures, and where necessary, the legal infrastructure. Meanwhile, I believe that success of the digitization of the country hinges on the combined efforts of all stakeholders. It requires consolidated efforts by the government, private sector, and society. Collaborative work with local and foreign partners is very important for us in the acquisition of knowledge and technologies, and financial injection into the implementation of these projects. Partnerships, co-creation activities, and joint initiatives are of great importance as we develop a new culture of large-scale cooperation. So far, I have been deliberate in sharing out our vision of how digitalization will play a pivotal role in what we want to achieve. I have therefore laid the foundation of our long-term partnerships. Finally, I once more thank you for participating in the digitization of our countries. I emphasize again that Africa is open to partnerships and collaborative work. Together with partners, we can turn our countries into significant players in the digital world. Though the Kenya government has already taken significant steps towards digitization, we have many more plans for the future. I therefore stress that facilitation of digitization is among the paramount duties of the heads of state agencies that are sitting here as directed by His Excellency the President. As the Prime Cabinet Secretary, I want it on record that digitization of the country is one of our major priorities, and indeed mine as well. Hence, respective ministries and agencies must accelerate digitization, in the implementation of their dockets to ensure efficient management of state assets and improved service delivery to our citizenry. Of course, the private sector should not be left behind. You have my assurance that government will provide all necessary support to firms that create new jobs, especially to IT companies that operate in high-value industries. In conclusion, I express my gratitude to the organizers of this conference, the Ministry of Information, Communication, and the Digital Economy. I had the privilege of once serving in 2 critical dockets as a Minister for Finance, and quite a number. One was that we had to start embracing technology, and very fast. 2, we had to embrace the private sector because it was clear that it was not tenable for the public sector to imagine that they can continue running everything. So one of the things that we had to do was to break certain barriers where, when you talked of privatization, nobody wanted to hear. And I'm saying this because I have legislators here, both in the Senate and in Parliament, and they'll really have to help us here. We had to deal with KPTC, Kenya Posts and Telecommunications Corporation, the big one. It used to have Chiloba's job, it had Tanui's job, it had everybody's job. That was all embedded in one entity. And it was absolutely necessary that we move forward. Let me tell you, it was a nightmare. Because certain people or certain individuals, when they get to these kind of positions, it becomes literally impossible for them to see that they have to cede ground for the greater good of the country. The whole control syndrome, so embedded in our society that you don't want to work with the private sector, you don't want to work with anybody, was crippling and suffocating the country. So we took some drastic steps. painful ones, we privatized. And to privatize, I can confidently stand here and say that I played my role in making sure Safaricom was able to set foot, and it has become the entity that it is. What were the issues then? Losing control. That was the basic thing. Losing control, losing positions of privilege, and to a great extent also losing opportunities for a few to make money. The government was injecting money from the exchequer into telecoms. So KPTC was dependent on the exchequer. Today, we all stand here as proud Kenyans because we moved that industry from being dependent on the exchequer, a drain on the exchequer, to a mega contributor to the exchequer. That is what has happened. What we were trying to hold on to as a nation was just a joke. Our biggest taxpayer today is yourselves, guys in the tech industry, led by Safaricom. Now, these are the decisions that we must look at. And the other issues were, sasa ukiweka fax machine, siri za serikali zinaondoka. A false notion of security. Now you have the instruments, you have the legislation, we can still deal with security-related issues, but we can have our private sector growing. So at that time, one of the famous phrases that the retired president, because apart from KPTC, there were other entities that had to be also privatized. KCB, which was wholly government-owned, it had to be privatized. There were so many others that we had to let go. And I'm saying this because privatization is coming. We have to let go on some things. So, on one famous morning, because we kept on coming with this agenda of privatization to the late president, he then confronted me and some of my colleagues and he said, in Kiswahili, I'll try and paraphrase it a little later in English. He said, hata wewe kama ni ndume, hiyo ndume itawezana na ndama 50. Muende pole pole. In fact, on a lighter note, his strong cultural accent came through and he said, muende bole bole. So, I didn't know what to tell him. But you know what, sitting here and listening to you, I've just realized, if I had been slightly more schooled in technology like you guys, I would have told him, Mzee, I may not be the bull that can service 50 heifers, but I can tell you, technology can service 50 heifers. So, through technology and innovation, you are the guys who can help us leapfrog. You can become the bull in the house. Not a bull in a china shop, but a bull that can service growth in this country because technology is what we need to actually move forward. We have still in the docket over 200 public enterprises. Over 200 public enterprises. Through technology, what can we do? Because these 200, are they all adding value? How many of them are dependent on the exchequer? How many of them are a drain to the exchequer? And how many of them, through you, can be transformed into productive heifers that will ensure we have milk for the growing population? This is the challenge I would like to leave with you, because we have a lot of work to do. I'll give you another example. A few days ago, I was in Western Kenya, and somebody talked about privatization. I listened, I did not respond, but I hope I'll meet the person and talk to them a little more. But there was an American ambassador here, Aurelia Brazil. Some of you may have met her when she was a ambassador here. And she asked one fundamental question, and that is the question I want to leave with you, and particularly with the legislators, because then it is going to help us in actually interacting and embracing technology and moving forward. She asked, suppose you privatize or you use technology or whatever, but you have more of private sector input in the management of the Kenya Airports Authority. With technology, you can grow the revenue, and I've heard you talk about growing revenue in government. You can increase efficiency, and it will be the public sector partnering with the public sector. But from a control freak perspective, if you talk about the possibility of the private sector working in the management of Kenya Airports Authority, people get jittery. But she asked one fundamental question. Suppose there's a private sector entity through a privatization program which brings technology and all this. Will they uproot Jomo Kenyatta Airport physically? Will that asset be removed from Nairobi physically and taken to Las Vegas? Or does it remain an asset in this country that is more productive, that is generating more revenue, that is creating more employment? These are the questions we need to look at. We can then look at the process and how you achieve it. But surely, let us not be scared of embracing new technology and the private sector coming to work to increase productivity and enhance revenue. We must be broad-minded. We must be open. When I sit here or I stand here, I can ask you freely, who is managing the Dubai airport? Who is managing it? And isn't it one of the most efficient hubs that you can ever come across? Do you think it's the government of Dubai that is managing it, or Emirates? Directly? No. So let's open up and see how we can embrace each other private sector, business, technology, and transform our lives and transform the lives of our Kenyans as we move forward. Finally, just one line, and then I'll declare the conference open. 3 words for me: growth, sustainability, and equity. Those 3: growth, sustainability, and equity. The technology you are applying, is it a catalyst for growth? 2, please help us not to introduce technologies that excite us for 2 months and then you withdraw them because they are not sustainable. Introduce technologies that are sustainable to help us move forward. In my village of Mululu and Chamakanga, I don't want people to get excited about something being introduced, and then 2 months later we tell them we have withdrawn that technology that looked very good and that was good, but because we cannot sustain it, it has been withdrawn. Let us not put our citizens in that kind of situation, our businesses in that situation, our hustlers in that situation. The final one is what you are introducing, the technology that you are introducing. Is it broadening inequalities or is it enhancing equality? If you can answer those 3 as a rule of thumb, I think you'll be doing wonders for us. Growth, sustainability, and equality with your technology. God bless you all. I now declare this conference formally open. Thank you.